Welcome back to the Spectre Creative channel, and today we're talking about She-Ra. I have not done that many videos on She-Ra on this channel, and wait, I'm actually not talking about this version of She-Ra. Wait, there we go. That's the one. That's the She-Ra that I love, that I think you guys all love too. God, I love the She-Ra cartoon when I was a kid, and I still do love Princess of Power. They were some of my favorite parts of working on classics. And I haven't done too many videos on Princess of Power or She-Ra, and I've been getting a lot of questions in the comments. So I thought I'd kind of do a hodgepodge video hitting a lot of different points on her origin, why she's around, how she's He-Man's sister and was created as a girls' brand because back in the day, 40% of the sales of Masters of the Universe were to girls. And she started off as an action figure. But the girls' group at Mattel got wind of what was happening and said, well, if you're going to make a girl hero, we want to do her in our group because that way the revenue hits our P&L. And she got absconded by the girls' group and turned into a doll instead of an action figure. But she was still a great toy and sold really well. So who is She-Ra? What's her connection with the evil Horde? And what's going on with her sword? So the evil Horde were the ones who raised her. She was raised to be a bad guy, if you will. She never knew her parents. She thought that Hordak and Shadow Weaver were her guardians or her parents, and she became the Force Enforcer, or Force Captain of the Horde. Until the day she was given a magical sword, which she raised above her and became She-Ra, the most powerful woman in the universe. And we all know this story because we've seen the amazing 80s movie He-Man and She-Ra, The Secret of the Sword, which tells her origin. This was the first 5 episodes of the Filmation series that were just edited together into one long feature-length movie and actually did have a theatrical release, which is pretty cool. But most fans also saw it as just the first 5 episodes. For a week straight, you could see the origin of She-Ra. So let's talk a bit about her sword. I've covered He-Man's sword in the past, and because they're related, it's necessary to connect them. They both started off as the power of the universe that created the universe, like a giant wave. And this power was infused into a sword in order to protect and wield it by the overlords of Tralla. Those are Orko's people when they were, great and powerful. And this sword was given to a soldier called Hero, who was going to guard it. The sword was called the Sword of He being the Trallan word for power. So the soldier was named Ro, so he became Hero, the guardian of the Sword of He. And through a series of events, he winds up on Eternia, he meets up with King Grayskull, and he winds up dying and passing the sword to King Grayskull, saying, keep this safe, you've earned it. I trust you with this, in his dying breath. And so Hero passes away, and King Grayskull now becomes the owner of the Sword of He. Recognizing it's way too powerful for him, he drains the energy of the power of the universe out of it and puts it into an orb. So the orb now holds the energy that was once infused into the sword by the overlords of Tralla. And the sword, while it is still magical, it no longer is responsible for holding this power, but it can tap into the power. And that's kind of how He-Man's powers work. So when King Grayskull gave his life defending Eternia from Hordak, and this is in the 2000X series, episode 35 from Mike Young, he passed, and then several guardians throughout the next few centuries were all guardians of the Sword of He, known as the He-Men. And eventually, the true guardian was going to come along and just become the He-Man. All right, so that covered one sword, but why are there 2 swords? We understand where one of them came from. It came from Tralla and arrived on Eternia full of power. Power was put into an orb, and it can now tap into that orb, but there's 2 swords. Well, that's because there were 2 chosen ones. Instead of one He-Man being born, Marlena and Randor, by their prophecy and destiny, had 2. Had a girl and a boy. And therefore, 2 swords were needed. And this is part of the whole prophecy that the chosen one was going to come from both Earth and Eternia blood, because Marlena is from Earth and married Randor, so it, combined both planets together, Earth and Eternia. And now that they were twins, well, there was a need to have 2 swords. So how are we going to do this? Because both He-Man and, both Adam and Adora, the two kids, the 2 infants, were going to need to grow up in order to protect the sword and really protect the power of the universe. The orb is really what they're protecting. The sword is just their weapon, which, think of it like Wi-Fi. It can wirelessly tap into the orb and the power of the universe to turn Adam and Adora into She-Ra and He-Man. And that's so that they can protect the power of the universe, by tapping into the power. So that gets us back to two swords. We had one sword that was protected through the centuries by the different He-Men, like Wundar and Ular and Vicor are among some of the He-Men over the ages between King Grayskull and the twins being born. But now that you have the twins being born and the need for two swords, it was time for cloning. I know what you're saying. You're like, come on, please. Cloning? You have got to be kidding me. That is like sci-fi motif 101.3. That's used in everything. And cloning isn't used in Masters of the Universe. I mean, that's a Star Wars thing, right? That's not a He-Man thing. What are you talking about? Well, the thing is, while obviously clones have become a big part of Star Wars over the years, and they tend to show up in pop culture in all sorts of ways over the years. I mean, kind of everybody has their, even Weird Al had a clone song. Everybody has a chance to do clones at one time or another. And putting them into Masters of the Universe, well, this really actually wasn't something new. And that's what part of this video is about, is why was it that we had the Sword of He be magically cloned? Well, cloning is part of Masters of the Universe. If you go back to the early 80s mini-comics and the one that came with Teela, which was called The Tale of Teela, in this storyline, Skeletor wants to marry the sorceress, is what he wants to do, but he can't. She's too powerful. So he decides that, okay, well, I will just get my own version of the sorceress, raise her, and then marry her, because that's not creepy at all. So now we have sort of the flashback of Teela, who, as one of He-Man's sort of fellow warriors, one of the Masters of the Universe, which is the name of the good guy team, or at least it was later established as the name of the team. And she's kind of wondering where she came from. And so we learn that Skeletor cloned the sorceress and created a magical cloned baby of her. And again, with the idea that he was going to raise this baby to one day be his bride. Again, not creepy at all. Well, fortunately, the good guys won and were able to get the cloned baby back, and Man-at-Arms went on to raise her as his daughter. And later in the comic, they merge and then they unmerge, and it was basically to explain away why the toy came with the snake armor and was supposed to represent two different characters, the sorceress and Teela. But that's not important right now. Later on, this kind of got retconned, and it turned into just the sorceress's baby, that she hatched from an egg? Sure, why not? And the whole cloned baby thing kind of went away. And even in 2000X, this storyline was continued, and it actually turned out that Fisto was the actual father. Man-at-Arms was the adopted father. And Fisto and Man-at-Arms are brothers. And man, are you keeping notes? This is crazy. So, yeah, there's a lot of conflicting storylines in Motu. I mean, going back to the original mini-comic, He-Man is just this jungle guy who shows up and rescues the Green Goddess from a big purple monster. And Classics was all about recognizing everything. We wanted to try to find a way to pay homage and to incorporate every single part of Masters of the Universe in some way or another, really mostly so we could sell more toys. So the original He-Man became Ular, the jungle He-Man, and that was a great way of recognizing that concept. And some fans loved this, some fans hated this, and it really was coming from a motivation of referencing everything, even if it was just a nod to it, like Skeletor originally being a monster from another dimension. So in Secret of the Sword, the animated show and movie, Hordak is the one who steals baby Adora. He kidnaps her. And we couldn't do this in Classics because Classics followed the continuity of 2000X. And in 2000X, Hordak was in Despondos. He'd been banished there. The only way he could communicate with Eternia, which is a different dimension, was by projecting his sort of spirit self Sort of think of it like a Jedi ghost, but the person's still alive. They're just in a different dimension. It's kind of like interdimension, Zoom or FaceTime. And this meant that Hordak could not be the one to actually do the kidnapping. So the idea that Hordak manipulated Skeletor into doing the kidnapping really worked, because Skeletor was on Eternia and he was available. And I know you're saying, wait a minute, please, Skeletor couldn't do the kidnapping because he was locked away behind the Mystic Wall. And until the Mystic Wall broke down, there was nothing, Skeletor couldn't get to the good guys, to where Adora and Adam were being raised. Here you can see the Sorceress and Man-at-Arms building the wall. This was a wall between the light and dark hemisphere. And Skeletor's goal for the first 20 years was trying to break this wall and find a way to bust through it so that he could claim the throne of Eternia for himself, since he was the firstborn. And this wall, which was originally established by Michael Halpern in his 80s Bible for the story, or for the brand, and was later carried on into 2000X, this wall prevented Skeletor from doing that. So we had to get him through the wall. So, introducing Skeletor in his battle armor, giving a rationale for why Skeletor needed to upgrade his armor and now protect himself with battle armor. Well, why not have it be mystical battle armor? So as revealed in Battle Armor Skeletor's bio, the armor allowed him to walk through the Mystic Wall, basically. And that was how he was able to kidnap Adora. He couldn't bring all of his minions or his troops, but by donning this armor that was designed by Hordak and had magical spells infused by Hordak, it gave Skeletor the ability to walk through the wall and kidnap Adora, and then send her to Despondos to be raised by Hordak. Of course, the armor then got destroyed in a battle, and Skeletor now couldn't do that anymore. Hey, see how it works? He was able to go through the wall, and now he can't again. Ain't storytelling easy when you just, make it all work? So Adora is kidnapped by Battle Armor Skeletor before his battle armor is destroyed, and the baby is sent to Despondos, where Hordak and the evil Horde are, and also where they're on Etheria, which is in Despondos. So the baby is more or less brainwashed or raised by Hordak and Shadow Weaver, and really taught to be evil, if you will, and taught that, the Horde are the rightful rulers of Etheria. And She-Ra, or rather Adora, dons the personality of Despara, which was her sort of evil Horde persona. In Filmation, it was just Force Captain Adora, but for classics, kind of took it to the next level. And this was actually because Rob David, who is the one between Jay and Silent Bob there, he came up with Despara. He wanted to kind of come up with a better visual for Adora being a bad guy, and she became really, really popular. So way to go, Rob David, for creating Despara. And she got used by lots of different creators in the DC comics and in classics. We actually got to make a figure of her, which really solidified her as the kind of evil version of Adora, who has been brainwashed or raised by the evil Horde to be a bad guy, to basically be a leader in the Horde. And she has no idea that she's actually a princess of Eternia. She's here on Etheria helping to keep the peasants down and keep the Horde in control, and, having a good time at that. With her, cool, close-shaved haircut and football markings under her eyes. Sure, why not? So, through the course of events, Despara winds up leading an invasion from Despondos into Eternia, and there, of course, she meets Eternia's heroes, and one of them happens to be her brother, Heman. And they fight, and during this, she comes to realize that Heman is her brother, and that she is not evil. She's a good guy, and using the power of the Grayskull, he helps restore her memories, and she realizes who she is, and she's able to give up the Despara personality and join the Masters of the Universe as She-Ra. And that would have been the plan for 2000X had She-Ra been available. Mattel could do her as a toy, but she wasn't available for the series for a variety of reasons. I did actually a whole video about this, about the legal issues surrounding She-Ra and the red tape, how technically she's considered, from an entertainment standpoint, as a different property from He-Man. So even though they've met in previous entertainment in Filmation, nowadays if She-Ra's going to be in entertainment, she has to stand on her own. She can't be involved with He-Man. Of course, this could change, but this is my understanding. At the time when I left Mattel, and I think it's obvious from the Netflix show that didn't have He-Man why this still is that She-Ra is a separate property from a legal standpoint. So things like the He-Man and She-Ra holiday special, while great in the 80s, could no longer be done because it's now a separate property. From a toy line, it's a little wonky, and we were able to do all of the POP characters in Masters of the Universe Classics, mostly because it was kind of a done under the wire, and we were really just trying to build the biggest toy line possible. And I'm really glad we did, because getting the toys to all be together is really what it's all about. Because you can have your own adventures, and He-Man and She-Ra can team up in classics anytime you want. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope it shed some light on the origin of She-Ra, how she was kidnapped, how her powers work, how her sword works. If there's anything else you'd like me to cover, let me know in the comments below. Subscribe and give it a like. That tells YouTube to share it with more people. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you the next time.